Have you ever felt just completely buried in information when you're trying to get up to speed on something new? It's like, trying to see the whole landscape, but you're stuck right in the middle of a forest. You know there's a bigger picture, but finding it, well, that's the challenge. Often we look for a literature review to sort of cut through the noise, right? Give us a snapshot. But today, we're diving deep into a very specific and actually surprisingly slippery type of review, the state of the art review. So, SotA for short, it sounds impressive, doesn't it? Like the absolute latest thinking. But the problem for ages really has been that even though everyone uses the term, there hasn't been a clear, agreed upon way to actually do one rigorously. It's kind of like admiring a building but having no blueprints.
That hits the nail on the head. State of the art, it's a term that gets used a lot, but the actual how-to, the methodology, has been incredibly vague. And that lack of rigor, well, it's left a real gap for researchers. So our mission today is to unpack this really groundbreaking new framework. It sets out a clear 6-step method for doing these SotA reviews. And it's solid, built on a huge study looking at almost 1,000 articles. It finally brings that much-needed structure.
Yeah, I can absolutely see why that structure is needed, especially when, the decisions based on these reviews are so important. My hope for this deep dive is that by the end, you won't just understand what a real SotA review is, but you'll have this new way of looking at how knowledge evolves in any field, really getting state of the art in your own thinking. Okay, let's unpack this then. So let's kick off with that surprising find at the core of this research. This term, state of the art, super popular, sounds really definitive, but it's consistently lacked a clear methodology. Like everyone agreed it was important, but nobody quite knew what it was.
Exactly. And the data, well, it really backs this up strongly. They looked at 940 articles published between 2014 and 2021, all calling themselves SotA reviews. And what's really striking is that almost all of them, like 98%, had no citations, no resources on how they actually conducted the review. Even the tiny number that did cite something, those sources gave basically no real guidance. Maybe a sentence on the purpose, but not a how.
Wow, 98%. That's huge. So not only was there no guide, but the term itself was all over the place, used inconsistently. The study found 4 different ways it was being used, often confusingly. Most of them, 71%, just slapped the label in the title or abstract, no discussion of method inside. Then another 9% used it like an adjective for other review types, a state-of-the-art systematic review, which kind of misses the whole point that it's supposed to be distinct. Only about 15% actually use the phrase to mean a specific methodology. That's a lot of fog around a term meant to be cutting edge.
It really is. And this fuzziness, it's not just academic navel-gazing. It has real consequences. Think about fields like medical education. These knowledge syntheses, they inform critical decisions. We're talking curricula, accreditation standards, even how patient care evolves. So if the methods behind these syntheses are shaky or inconsistent, well, the decisions based on them can be shaky too. That could have serious, widespread impact. Rigor here is absolutely essential.
That real-world impact definitely highlights why this clarity matters so much. It makes me ask then, if state-of-the-art has been used so loosely, what should it really mean? What makes a proper SotA review different? You mentioned systematic or scoping reviews. How does SotA stand apart?
Right, the core purpose is different. A SotA review offers an interpretive synthesis. It aims to tell a story. Essentially, it describes 3 things. This is where we are now, this is how we got here, and this is where we could be going. It's fundamentally a narrative, but one that's really rooted in the timeline, the chronology of how thinking developed in a specific field. And it goes deeper than just listing facts. It digs into the why and the how. It asks questions like, why did our understanding evolve this specific way? Were there other paths we could have taken? Are there turning points we should look back at now for new insights? It's about taking apart that history of understanding and really examining why it went the way it did.
That's a really interesting perspective, not just the what, but the why and the what if. Like, the study mentioned senior scholars using these to share decades of insight, tracing that whole intellectual journey. But then junior scholars could use the same framework to critique that history and maybe propose completely new directions.
Okay, so just to clarify for everyone listening, how does it stack up against those other reviews? Systematic reviews are narrow, right? Focused questions. So SotA is broader, more historical. Scoping reviews map what's out there now. SotA interprets the historical journey and those turning points. And critical reviews often pull in outside literature, whereas SotA stays focused within one domain's literature.
You've got it. It really carves out its own niche. It's about that internal, historical, interpretive narrative.
Okay, this interpretive angle is fascinating. It makes me think, what kind of truth are we actually looking for here? Because the philosophy behind this must be pretty different from, say, a systematic review seeking definitive proof.
You're absolutely right. That's a crucial point.
The researchers didn't just look at what people did, they dug deeper. They analyzed the articles inductively to figure out the underlying principles. And if you connect the dots, well, it turns out these reviews are based on specific philosophical ideas about knowledge and reality, even if the original authors weren't always explicit about it. So the view of reality underpinning SotA reviews is relativism. Basically, it suggests there isn't one single objective truth out there waiting to be discovered. Think about it. The literature on any complex topic offers multiple viewpoints, right? And reality itself, well, we can't fully grasp it anyway because of our limitations technology, our own disciplinary biases, you name it. So our understanding is always a construction subjective, shaped by us, and also intersubjective, shaped by shared perspectives within groups. And the context matters hugely. The example to use is great. A review on gender identity looks very different if done by gender studies scholars versus, say, surgeons specializing in reassignment. So the bottom line is, no single objective truth. Researcher interpretations reflect their way of seeing things.
That's quite a statement. No single objective truth. It makes sense when you explain it with the examples how different fields or even senior versus junior scholars might frame things. Like the medical education example, maybe seniors see assessment evolving from measurement to human judgment to a whole system issue, while someone focused on tech sees it constrained by old media, now moving towards AI. Both histories, but different narratives based on perspective.
Exactly. And that perspective shapes the interpretation, which leads us to the epistemology, the theory of knowledge, which is subjectivism. This means the knowledge generated in a SotA review is seen as inherently value-dependent. It grows out of the researcher's interpretations. It's informed by their expertise, sure, but also their experiences, their social context. And crucially, it's shaped by the historical moment the review is done in. So the knowledge isn't fixed forever. It's a synthesis that's expected to change over time as perspectives shift.
Okay, so putting it simply. 6A reviews aren't about finding the final answer because that's seen as impossible within this viewpoint. Instead, they're about presenting a really well-argued, transparent case for one way the literature could be understood from a clearly stated viewpoint. That's quite a nuanced take on knowledge. Right, now that we've got our heads around the philosophy and what makes these reviews unique, let's get practical. How do we actually do one? The authors didn't just point out the problem, they built that 6-stage methodology to bring rigor to this whole interpretive process.
Exactly. And this framework is, I think, incredibly helpful for anyone wanting to tackle a SotA review properly. Let's walk through the stages. I'll use that interprofessional education, IPE, example from the paper to make it concrete. And I'll point out the markers of rigor they emphasize. Okay, stage 1. Determine initial research question and field of inquiry. This is your starting block. Define the topic, the knowledge area. Guiding questions are simple. What's the research question? What field are we looking at? For the IPE example, maybe it starts as, how has thinking about IPE evolved? What are the modern ways people think about and do IPE?
Seems straightforward enough for a start.
It is, but it often gets refined, which brings us to stage 2. Determine time frame. This is key. You do a broad look at the literature to find those historical markers, those moments that define what now really means for your topic. You ask, what historical markers set the time frame for now? What starting point can we justify for this review? With IPE, they suggest the World Health Organization's 2010 definition could be a sentinel moment, marking that shift to modern thinking.
Okay, I can see how finding those markers is crucial. It sets the boundaries for your state-of-the-art period.
Precisely. And that leads directly into stage 3. Finalize research questions to reflect time frame. So based on what you found in stage 2, you might tweak your initial question. This revised question, and importantly, your justification for the timeline you chose, these are markers of rigor. You need to explain why this time frame makes sense. The questions are, did stage 2 change your research question? Do you need to adjust it? For IPE, the question might become more focused. What is the state-of-the-art way of conceptualizing and realizing IPE, specifically looking at that modern era?
Makes sense. Refining based on the historical context.
Then stage 4, develop search strategy. Now you design how you'll find the articles. Critically, because SotA explained how we got here, your search has to include literature from before your main time frame. You need that historical context. Consulting a librarian here is really recommended. They're experts at this. And you must report your full search strategy clearly. That's another rigor marker. Questions. How far back do you need to search for the how we got here part? How can a librarian help? For IPE, the strategy would aim to find articles showing the conceptual shifts before 2010, and then describe the concepts and practices after 2010.
Right, gotta get the backstory too.
Absolutely. Now, stage 5, analyses. This is the deep interpretive work, where the researcher's insights really come into play. It's inductive. You read the articles, look for patterns, similarities, underlying assumptions, those key turning points, gaps. You start forming premises about the history, the current state, and where things might go next. You track which articles support or contradict your ideas, notice who the dominant voices are, if any viewpoints are being missed or marginalized. And here's a really important part: verification. It's not about pretending to be objective. It's about testing your interpretations. You pick different articles that they fit your premises. You actively look for contradictory views. Why? Not to disprove yourself, but to make sure your synthesis genuinely reflects the literature you looked at and can respond thoughtfully to other interpretations. This verification step is a major marker of rigor. Guiding questions cover history. How did we get here? What theories shape things? The present and future. Where could research go? Are there dominant authors? Marginalized views? For IPE, the analysis identifies those pivotal moments, pre- and post-2010, and thinks about future directions.
That verification process sounds intense, but really valuable. It's like stress testing your own argument to make it stronger, acknowledging its subjective roots, but ensuring it's well-grounded in the evidence.
Exactly. It builds that defensible interpretation we talked about. And finally, stage 6, reflexivity. Given the relativist and subjectivist foundations, this is non-negotiable. You must articulate how your own subjectivity, your background, experiences, biases shaped your interpretations and your suggestions for the future. This reflexivity statement is the final, crucial marker of rigor. The guiding question is simply, provide a reflexivity description. For the IPE example, it means explaining how the researcher's own perspectives influence how they read and synthesize the IPE literature.
Okay, that makes total sense. You have to own your perspective because it's fundamental to this type of review. So, bringing this all back, what does this mean for you listening right now? Whether you're a student, a researcher, or honestly, just anyone trying to get a solid handle on a complex topic, understanding this rigorous way of doing SotA reviews helps you evaluate them better when you read them. You know what to look for now. And if you ever need to do one, you now have a clear roadmap for producing something with real clarity and impact.
Precisely. Having this explicit methodology laid out is so important because journals do value SotA reviews. They recognize them. But as we said, the how-to was missing. This work really fills that gap. It allows for much more rigorous, transparent, and ultimately more useful syntheses, not just in medical education, but potentially in any field looking at its own evolution.
And that clarity is just so vital, isn't it? When decisions hang on these reviews, policy, education, patient care, having a solid, reliable method matters immensely. It helps ensure that state-of-the-art actually means something thoughtful and well-developed, leading to better decisions overall. So, quite a journey today. We went from the confusion around state-of-the-art reviews to really understanding their unique power, that historical, interpretive lens. We saw how they tell that story, where we are, how we got here, where we might go. And now we have this clear 6-step methodology grounded in those philosophies of relativism and subjectivism to guide the process.
It really does provide that missing blueprint. And perhaps a final thought for you to consider. This whole approach encourages us to look back, to question those historical turning points and decisions, right? To see if maybe different paths could have been taken. So what if you consciously applied that lens, that SotA way of thinking, to any topic or problem you're grappling with? Might looking back critically reveal overlooked possibilities or alternative futures that could genuinely reshape how you understand things right now? It kind of nudges us all to be more active participants in how knowledge evolves, not just passive consumers.